From calling a female fighter on her looks, to questioning the striking of Khabib Nurmagomedov in a La Quinta fight, Joe Rogan took his MMA commentary to a new low when he said Chase Hooper doesn't belong to the UFC and not on the same level as the other fighters, and he must fight in the lower organizations, but eating up his own words when Chase submitted his opponent, and later interviewing him after his fight. Hi, my name is Zahid, and I'm here to say why Joe Rogan is the worst and the most biased commentator in all of the UFC. Just take a look at how distraught Hooper was after hearing what Joe had to say about him during the fight.
It sounded to me like Joe Rogan had you released in the second round, like off to the regional scene to get more work. But as you're watching it and seeing it all play out, like what did you think of the commentary overall?
Yeah, it's brutal to, hear these people that you kind of idolize a little bit just kind of shitting all over you, It's kind of, I don't know. It's hard to deal with. But some points were valid. I just feel like it was a little more accentuated than it needed to be. Like, obviously I know I need to work on my striking. Like, I'm getting that situated. I'm going to go to Thailand or something and get the work in that I need.
Yeah, the people you idolize shitting all over you. That's a pretty damn expression, But let us take a look at why this is happening. Why is it that Joe Rogan here and now and sometimes often have such a dull moment in UFC commentary that people start complaining, and we as a UFC fan hate that, The reason is that Joe Rogan is not an MMA expert. Now, let me emphasize that Joe Rogan is one of the pioneers of the UFC. Joe Rogan is one of the best things that can happen for the UFC. Joe Rogan is the reason why many people watch UFC. Why I say that? Because Joe Rogan has diverted his main audience from his podcast to 100 million deal with his Spotify, his podcast. So he has such a big podcast and he's diverted many younger people from his podcast to the MMA crowd. So he's a pioneer of UFC in that regard. But when it leads to the technical details of a fighter, and especially to the fighters that he don't personally know, he tends to favor that fighter that he knows something about. That is the primary reason why the technicality of the game is compromised. And the people like John Anik, why we like John Anik's commentary? Because he is very technical. He knows about every fighter that is fighting on the card. But in case of DC, in case of the Joe Rogan, and in case of other commentators, we see that they lack the technical aspect of the game. But on the other hand, we have other fighters who are very good commentators. Like when we see the commentary of Paul Felder, he is also a fighter. He is really different. He is very technical about the aspect of the game, and he also has different lines about striking and different lines like Dominic Cruz. What Dominic Cruz does, Dominic Cruz is great, I think one of the best commentators of UFC. After John Anik, I think Dominic Cruz is the best commentator. Why? What is the reason behind this? Because Dominic Cruz emphasizes on technical details of the fighter. He does not care who the fighter is, whether he knows the fighter or not, but there is technical aspect to his commentary. And we as a UFC fan, we do not want someone as a commentator, because even though UFC is not as famous as the WWE, but we like UFC. Why we like UFC? Because UFC is technical. UFC is very science-based game. In UFC, you would never ever want a biased commentator. We totally disregard any type of biasness in UFC. That is why it is our time to demand technical and a more sound MMA commentator. Despite we know lots of the UFC fighters are not known by the masses, we totally do not care about that. We only care about the technical details, and that is why we need a better commentator, and we deserve it.